there, fearfully and wonderfully made human. And welcome back to the Holistic Counselor Podcast, where faith, psychology, and holistic healing intersect. I'm your host, Diana S. Rice, licensed mental health counselor from Through the Valley Therapy and Transform Mind Consulting and Coaching. And I'm so grateful you're here joining us for another meaningful conversation about mental health, faith, identity, and the journey toward whole person healing. On this podcast, we explore the questions many people are quietly wrestling with today. Things like healing from shame, navigating church hurt, rebuilding faith after painful experiences, understanding the nervous system, overcoming addiction, and learning how our choices, habits, and relationships shape our mental and spiritual well being. Today's conversation is one I think many listeners, especially men, and the people who love them, will find both honest and thought provoking. Joining me today is Jason Lyle. Jason equips men to master their inner world when life feels out of control. A former pastor turned men's coach, he now works with fathers and men who want to break destructive cycles, rebuild their faith, and develop resilience through embodied practices that help train the nervous system and strengthen personal discipline. He leads Sacred Grit retreats and hosts the Sacred Grit podcast, where he explores themes around addiction recovery, responsibility, faith, reconstruction, masculinity, and the inner work required to rebuild life after hitting rock bottom. In today's conversation, I hope to explore Jason's story, from ministry to men's coaching, along with deeper questions many people are searching for right now. Why are so many men struggling with shame, addiction, and identity? What role does the nervous system play in impulse control and emotional regulation? How do practices like breath work, cold exposure, and discipline affect the brain and body? And how can someone reconnect with Christ when their relationship with church has been complicated or really painful? As always, the goal of this podcast is not to give quick fixes, but to create space for honest conversations that help people grow in clarity, responsibility, compassion, and hope. And if you find conversations like this helpful, one of the best ways you can support the show is by leaving a review, sharing the episode with someone who might benefit, or checking out the podcast resources and merch linked in the show notes. It truly helps the message reach more people who are searching for healing. On that note, Jason, thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, man. Okay, that voice. I just have to mention the voice. Like, I seriously, you never did voiceovers or anything like that?
No, never did voiceovers. I'm releasing my book. I think it's going to come out like the end of April, and the name of the book is Sacred Grit, and it's kind of a memoir, like a short memoir. I tell people I wrote it so that guys could read it. You know, most guys read like two sentence paragraphs are huge for most men, and so I wrote it really short, and I was doing the or getting ready to do the audio book, and somebody said, well, are you going to hire somebody or are you going to do it yourself? I'm like, no, man, I'm going to do it myself. Like I, uh, I sometimes hear myself on a podcast. I'm like, I don't even recognize it. But yeah, I get a little bit about my voice, and it's
Yeah,
Southern, and I guess it's deep from what I understand. So
it
yeah.
is. It's like that country singer I remember on American Idol way back then when he had that deep voice and he would come out and we're all like, oh my gosh. Well, so Southern, where are you from? Southern.
Georgia. Yeah, born and raised in Georgia. How about
Really?
you?
I was born in New York. I was
Okay.
raised in New York until I was 12, and then I came to South Florida. So I'm in South Florida now. So
Oh, nice.
I
Okay.
had
You're
a
down here where
I had a New Yorker accent, and it got beat out of me when I moved to South Florida back in the
hmm
80s. And so I worked really, really hard to talk like this.
Nah, I like it. I like it. You're doing good.
Thanks, man. All right, so let's get to the nitty gritty because listen, I have a lot of listeners or and clients that are reconstructing their faith or
Yep.
deconstructing fully, and that is something that I'm seeing more and more because if you research me, I'm a Christian counselor, but I realize in the 5 years that I've had, or almost 6 years, yeah, this will be the sixth year, that I've had this private practice that they come in feeling safe because they know that I'm a Christian. But then I realized there's 45,000 flavors of
Yeah.
Christianity out in this world, and people don't realize
Mhm.
that. So they may come in with assumptions already of like, I'm there, like, I believe the way they do exactly,
Mm.
right?
Mhm.
And I do have I've studied a lot and I continue to study because honestly, I don't know everything and I will never know everything. And my faith is my own and I am a disciple of Jesus Christ. You were a pastor. That's why I
Mhm.
have you on the show because I don't get very many pastors that want to come on and have a real conversation because I will
Sure.
challenge the thoughts too,
Sure.
right? So, I want to know if someone's searching why I left church but still love God, walk us through your story. What happened internally and externally that led you from pastoring a church to building sacred grit and adventures in recovery?
Yeah. So that's a that's a big story. So we'll just we'll back it up and kind of start from the beginning, but we'll move through pretty quickly, and that way we could give your listeners a 30,000 foot view that we can hone down into the present moment. So the thing I'll just start by saying I think it was Socrates who is accredited with saying I'm the wisest man who ever lived because I claim to know nothing. And I think there's a lot to be learned in that statement. We can study and learn and know, but at the end of the day, the God that created the heavens and the earth, the God that some call the universal energy, Christians call it Yahweh or the Lord or, Christ, that is much larger than our ability to wrap some sort of academic exercise around it. So while we can know things about, I don't know that we can ever fully know with our prefrontal cortex, but we can certainly know with our autonomic nervous system and our limbic system. And we'll get around to that here in just a little bit. So I was born June 5th, 1971, to Martha Joyce West. She was 15 years old. She had been, she got pregnant by Junior Ferguson, is what they called him, and he was 23 and nowhere to be found. And she was in high school and went to a home for unwed mothers to have me and then put me up for adoption immediately at birth. And 2 weeks later, I was adopted by Bobby and LaVonda Lyle, who became my parents and who raised me. And over the course of the years, I mean, to me, I was just a normal kid. I mean, I just did normal kid things. But as I got a little bit older, a few things started to show up. One was just this unbelievable infatuation with friends and friendships and needing connection. And my parents, just always needing to know they were there and an unbelievable capacity to talk, loved to talk. Still do to this day. I talk all the time. But there was also a spiritual curiosity. So December the 8th, 1979. I was 8 years old. I went down the aisle and got saved, is what we called it back then. I think they still do to this day. And I don't know that I still agree with the mode by which that happens in the church, but I do know for a fact that um, there was something larger than me going on that day. I remember the feeling very distinctly. I mean, I'm 54 years old, but I remember the day like it was yesterday. And right after that, I read the Bible all the way through for the first time at 8 years old.
Wow.
I spent time with it. My grandmother gave me a copy of the Living Bible. I don't know if anybody remembers that. Not the New Living Translation, but the actual Living Bible. And it's where a dude translated the Bible from King James English into regular everyday English, right in the subway of New York, actually. He did it on the way home from work every day. And so I read it all the way through and became very spiritually curious and was spiritually curious and remains spiritually curious. So that's kind of a thread that's ran throughout my life for a long time. I found pornography the first time when I was 10 years old in my uncle's plumbing shop. And I work with men who are addicted, and I've heard a lot of men talk about the first time they ever took a drink of alcohol and they'll say, "Oh my God." And it was just like all of a sudden everything in me calmed down. And for the first
Wow.
time, the voices in my head slowed. And that's what I felt like the first time I ever saw pornography. Well, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church. So pornography
Mm.
and sexuality and spirituality just did not mix. I mean, we were actually told that God curses men who masturbate. I mean, I had a
Yes.
youth counselor use a verse in the Bible about a man named Onan to shame us all over masturbation. So it was it immediately forced my sexuality into a hiding place. I
Yeah.
really wasn't allowed to talk about it. So right after that, I mean, I just got infatuated with girls and relationships, and I had to have a girlfriend. I had to have a relationship. Well, this, kind of kept going, manifested itself, and I ultimately got married at 19 years old. I'm in love. I just need this person in my life. And throughout that, had multiple affairs. I mean, I could just never be satisfied. I had needed to have more. And in 2003, 4, I started a church. 2003, I went to seminary. 2004, I was 33 years old. I started a church, and we called it the Open Range Church. It met in a barn on Tuesday nights, and we ran the horses out. I had 12 horses. We ran horses out. We brought people in, and then we took the people out and ran the horses in. And the reason why I did that was just like to this day, I wanted to give men a spiritual platform. I felt like men were just kind of being left out of church in general. Now,
Mm.
inside of me, things had calmed, but I think looking back on that, I thought, well, if I'll just give my life over to God, then I'll quit having all of these behaviors. Well, of course, that didn't work. And
Right.
so, and being a pastor with a sex addiction is bound to be a recipe for disaster. So I made it 13 years. And in 2017, an affair came out. And to be clear with your audience, I never had affairs with people in my church. I just, for some reason, that was this line that I had.
Oh,
I
good. Well,
never,
at least you had a line, Jason, because listen, honestly, like I do, because of what I do as a therapist, and what I research, that is something that I see now happening in the Protestant movement
huge.
more than anything. Like all these people, not all these people, but a lot of pastors who
Yeah.
are falling left and right. I mean, Ravi Zacharias, I mean, just all this stuff is coming to, it's like boiling up. Everything is boiling up in churches,
Yeah.
and your story right now, like I'm like, oh my gosh, I have so many questions now. Like, okay, you were raised Southern Baptist, and I don't want to put Southern Baptist down either because every denomination has people, wolves and shepherds closing. That's how I say it.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, so every
Yeah.
denomination, every religion,
Yep.
every New Age too. I mean, like I've seen it. I've seen it.
Yeah. Bikram yoga, same thing. Yeah.
Right,
Yep.
right. And so to me, you had a line. I love that you had a line, even though, you sex addiction. When you talked about seeing porn the first time at 10 years old, the first time I saw it was 9
Yeah.
in New York City. Like, it's just like my mom's a single immigrant mom working full time. I can't blame my mom. I'm not gonna be that victim, right? Because that's
Yeah.
the thing. We can take our story because I think that's why we're vibing, is because I'm like, okay, you get it, I get it. We're both Gen Xers. We both have like that commercial that everybody at our age range watch, like it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Do you remember that
Yeah. Yeah. The
commercial?
Wayne Williams years. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway,
Yeah.
but your experience is in the South, right? As a white male in
Hmm.
that culture. My experience is in the Northeast as a Latina immigrant, first, generation single immigrant mom. And here we are. This is where I'm
Yeah.
amazed. I'm amazed right now, Jason, because like your story, and I'm sorry, because this is how I vibe and do, is like, I just start thinking questions that pornography and what I hear a lot from my clients, okay, men and women that come to me, what you just nailed is the purity culture vibe that many
Yeah.
churches have done to people, high
Yeah.
controlled religion. That's what I say. And I have to walk, because I know what the word says, but then I'm like, wait, it doesn't say exactly that. That's the leadership that has utilized the word to control or to that guilt and shame, the purity culture and the deconstruction that I'm seeing, Jason, like so much. And they still want to keep their faith. You know what I mean? They
Hmm.
still want to love the Lord and be in the word. And it's like disentangling. That's what I call it, not deconstruct. They're
Hmm.
disentangling. How did I'm still like with the pastor thing. Where'd you go to seminary?
New Orleans Baptist Theological Seminary is where I studied theology, and then I studied international community development at Oxford University. So the two degrees I have, one is about theology, and the other is about application of said theology. So Yeah, I had a little bit of, but in Oxford's pretty liberal, New Orleans not so much. So I had a pretty good balance of theological understanding by the time I got done.
Yeah, and then the whole Southern Baptist thing, because I'm listening to your accent. My husband is from the South. He's a Southern Baptist preacher's kid.
No, nice.
He's the old, yeah, well, I don't know.
He's really
But
jacked up.
he is the oldest of the five boys, and he was like they, you know what I mean? They kind
Sure.
he was like the one that I mean, he married me, like,
Yeah.
and I'm his second wife. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
back to the addiction part, because that is another thing that I'm seeing not only in the males. People think that that whole porn addiction, there's some females out
Hmm.
there too.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
that shame and that getting married really, really young because of the purity culture, like, oh, because you're horny as a teenager. I'm just going to say it like it is.
Right.
It's like,
Yeah.
okay. And so now you're thinking, I got to get married. I got to get married. I got to get married because I'm
Yeah.
horny. And then they get married at 18, 19, 20 years old. And by 26, 27, their brain's finally fully developed. And now they're either not all, because some do work out. I want to say that. I want to say, but some end up being like abused, raped in marriage, using the word of
Sure.
God, like the word of God saying, your body's mine now. I've heard it all in the last 6 years.
Yep.
And I'm learning from these clients more and more. And I'm reading books and I'm trying to keep my faith with, you know what I mean? Because I'm just like,
Sure.
God, like, what is this? And I have to be reminded, like, okay, humans, we all have the two wolves that we feed.
Well, the thing about the purity culture, and I mean, by the time I broke out of all this, and I mean, I lost my job and just directly went right back into the Bible and Thomas Merton and Richard Rohr and all these, you know, who's the dude who wrote the Ragamuffin Gospel? Shit, I can't remember his name right off the top of me. He was a monk as well, Catholic monk.
Mm,
Oh, Brennan Manning. That's it. So I started going into all these different works about grace and forgiveness and love and could God be bigger than our structures? And I mean, I just kind of started and I went into 12 step programs. I was told, well, you're a sex addict. And so I go into
mhm.
12 step programs. And I just remember thinking, man, it's like, I just doesn't feel right. I mean, not that I thought it was wrong. I didn't at
Okay.
all, but all the structure of it just still felt like somebody was constantly telling me that there's this way that if you just believe, then you'll be right. And
Oh my
for me, I I I left the church. I started working on a farm, trying to kind of get my life built back together. Still married. We're trying to fight through, finding each other in a room that's on fire. There's smoke
God.
everywhere, but we're just kind of barely surviving. And that rocked on for 3 more years. I had another affair at a job I had gotten, lost that job. And that took me to a place that brought me to where I am today. So after I lost that job, I went to work for a wilderness therapy program as a field guide. And
Wow.
so we were 7 days in the woods, 7 days off, and working with kids. A lot of them have been adopted, strangely enough. And one night we come in off shift and they say, hey, you guys have a training tonight. And I was like, oh man, I mean, I've been in the woods for 7 days and I smell like I've been in the woods for 7 days. I've not had real food for 7 days. Like, I just want to get out of here. But okay, so we go in this training and there's 8 or 9 of us in there. And this guy named Rob Gent walks in. He's just this big jovial dude. And he's like, have you guys ever noticed that, our clients will have these just irrational behaviors, but they can't seem to regulate themselves? Like they'll
Yeah.
just run away in the middle of 44,000 acres. I'm like, yeah, I have noticed that. And he starts teaching us about the nervous system. And he says the reason why that is because once the amygdala or the fight or flight system gets stimulated, it takes over and they don't have access to the rational brain, to the prefrontal cortex.
Right.
And he goes into this whole explanation around the science of it. And then he says, is anybody in here adopted? And I said, yeah, I am. And he said, well, Jason, I want to ask you something. He said, if I told you that I love you and I want what's best for you, what is the first word that comes to mind? And I said, bullshit. And he said, exactly. He said, because you're living in the space of love and acceptance, you're living from a place of survival. And he said, survival is don't believe that, because if you believe that, you're going to get hurt and that's going to threaten your survival because the first person that was supposed to love you gave you away. And like, that's pretty profound. It's like this dude's reading my mail. So a few weeks go by, a few months go by, and my kids, they, at the time they're adults, had spouses of their own, still do. Um, but they found out, and it was just a very, very hard time for your kids to find out. And they knew about the one when I lost the church, but then they found out about this one, and it was just really bad. And so I was laying on my left side in my bed in the middle of the afternoon, planning my suicide, and I had it all planned out. It was very logical. It wasn't like a woe is me thing. It was like, just if you think about a dog that just keeps biting people and eventually it just has to be put down. That's how I felt.
Wow.
And so I had the plan, knew what I was going to do, and I thought, this guy Rob Gent, let me just reach out to him before I do this and see what he says. So I shot him an email, and I mean, I had nothing to lose, right? I just kind of vomited it all out on email. And he responds immediately. Now, this is a chief clinical officer of a national mental health company. I mean, he's based out of
Wow.
Arizona. He's, no reason to respond to little old Jason Lyle, but he immediately responds. He goes, "Yeah, Jason, I remember you." And he said, let's have a call. So we booked a Zoom call and got on Zoom a couple days later. And he introduced me to nervous system regulation. He started teaching me how to train my prefrontal cortex to communicate with my limbic system and how to let my limbic system communicate with my prefrontal cortex. And he gave me some tools, cold water, breath work. He gave me some books, Dopamine Nation, Widen Your Window, Body Keeps the Score. I mean, just all these, Peter Levine's book. I could Chasing the
Mm.
Tiger, something, I can't remember the name of it. But so I started reading, but here's the big thing that happened. I came home. I had that Zoom meeting at my wife's office because we didn't have good internet. We had like DSL at home. We lived out so far out in the middle of nowhere. And I came home from that meeting and filled the bathtub up with water, poured in a bag of ice I brought home, got all the ice out of the refrigerator, and stood there with my clothes off, going, well, I mean, I'm either going to do this or I'm not. And so I got in. And of course, when I got in, every alarm in my body went off. But Rob had told me, he said, when you get in, your limbic system is going to fire off and the prefrontal cortex is going to go offline. He said, but give it about 20 seconds and that it'll come back online. And sure enough, at about 20 or 30 seconds, it did. And there was like, the only way I know how to describe it, the way that I try to explain it to people, is it was like all of the sudden, all of the theology, all of the psychology, all of the, recovery work, all the things that my therapist had said, all of the things my sponsors had said became very real. It was as if all that information that had been stored up in my prefrontal cortex, and the only word I know to use, downloaded into my body. And so the next morning I got up and went out on the front porch and did a few yoga poses that I knew and started doing the breath work. It's Tumo breath work, made popular by Wim Hof, but it's thousands of years old. Did the breath work and just continued to connect that prefrontal cortex to the amygdala. And I thought, this is absolutely freaking amazing. Like, I don't even know. I mean, I would find myself doing things like, because I was a terrible liar, I would just lie for just to make people like me more, just lie. It's adopted kid thing. Most of them that I know do that.
Mm.
And I would find myself about to lie and I'll go, what am I doing? Like, I don't need to lie. Or I would lie and I'd look at the person and go, you know what? I was about to tell you a lie. Hang on a minute. Let me change that. And I'm like, what in the hell is that? Because I have never had the ability to pause like that. And so then I started sharing it with other people. So I have my best friend. He grew up in an abusive foster home. He was punished with food, just all kind of trauma from that. And he
Mhm.
started experiencing the exact same thing. He'd say, "Dude, this is unbelievable." And then I started sharing it with people who were struggling with addiction. And so his name is Chuck. Chuck and I started Adventures in Recovery, and we started taking guys on backpacking trips. And I mean, we're just going out in the woods for 4 or 5 days and teaching them how to breathe, how to get in cold water.
I
I
love
started
that.
integrating yoga and meditation. And we started seeing people go, oh my God, this is unbelievable. But a huge turning point in this, which is really where Sacred Grit came from. I had a guy who Chuck knew, and he had lost his son to a tragic death, a UTV accident. The UTV rolled over on him, killed him, and he and his wife weren't there, but they saw the aftermath, and he just couldn't get his life back together. I mean, he
Yeah.
owns a law practice that has 4 locations and just a successful man, but I mean, he was just coming apart. And at the time, his son had been dead for, I want to say, 2 years, but he was
Mm.
still just could not get life back together. And so I told Chuck, I said, well, let's go hiking with him. And so we take him and another guy who had lost a son out on a hiking trip. And, as we go in, he's just telling me how bad it is and, how hard life is. And, his marriage is falling apart and he's on medication and he can't make it through a work day without coming undone. And so I taught him cold water immersion, breath work, yoga, and meditation. And to this day, I tell people the story. He's one of my best friends now. He was just up here. I live in the mountains of Georgia. He's about 2 hours away. He came up. We did this ridiculously difficult hike a couple of weeks ago. We've been friends for 3 years now. But he sent me a text on the way home from that hiking trip. He said, I don't know what you did to me, but all I want to do is go home and put my life back together. And
Wow.
so he started on this track of learning nervous
Yeah.
system regulation. But the thing that I learned, and I'm going somewhere with all this, I know I'm talking a lot. I told you I did, remember?
And that's okay, Jason.
Is
If I didn't like what you were saying, I would cut you off.
when that nervous system opens, there's
Yeah.
opportunity.
Mhm.
And that opportunity is that I can take the information that I have and integrate it into my actions. But if I don't have access to the information, then I'm not going to change my action. So I also encourage therapy. I encourage 12-step programs. But I also encourage, I coach guys, but my coaching's mainly around nervous system regulation and
Mhm.
theology. Like I deal with a lot of guys that just have some terrible theology. And so, a lot of people say, I don't believe in God. And I'll say, well, tell me what God you believe in or you don't believe in, because chances I don't believe in that God either. So let's talk about that. So I have a lot of guys that are struggling through their spiritual life,
Yep.
and so that has turned into sacred grit, which sacred grit is, at the very, it's an ecosystem, right? There's the podcast, which I give away everything for free. I mean, anybody could listen to my episodes of podcast.
Hello.
They're everything I got, right? It's not,
100 and some episodes, and I
yeah, I'm
haven't
not,
not made a
yeah,
dollar.
I think I'm 112 and I'm not holding anything back.
Yep.
And then I do coaching, one-on-one coaching. I'm about to create a nervous system 101 school course that people can access and pay a one-time fee, and they'll get 10 video, 5 modules
Good. Okay.
teaching these practices, do the coaching, do retreats, and writing books. So I'm doing everything I can to get the information out there because it changed my life. Now, the
Yes.
way that I reconstructed my faith was learning how to just simply be in the present moment.
Amen.
Because,
Mm.
Diana, here's what I come to realize:
Mm.
what happened is memories at best, and they are not even necessarily dependable.
Right.
What is going to happen is a fantasy at best. I could lay all manner of plans, but I could all change in the blink of an eye. The only place where I have control is right here. And here's
Mm-hmm.
the thing about right here. People say, yeah, but God is omnipresent. God's omniscient. God's omnipotent. Maybe so. I would not argue God's sovereignty with anybody. But here's what I can tell you: I'm not. I'm not
Exactly.
omnipotent. I'm not omniscient. And I'm not omnipresent.
That's
I
right.
am right here, right now. And so I started reading the Bible again, and I run
Mm.
across some verses that Jesus said. He tells Nicodemus, he says, if you really want to see the kingdom of heaven, you must be born again. And we turn that into come down the aisle, say a prayer that you repeat after the pastor that's more like a Harry Potter movie than it is a spiritual moment. And then guess what? When you die, you get to go to heaven. So the shit show between now and then, you just tolerate. But
Oh,
that's not what Jesus meant. Jesus meant to see the kingdom of heaven, you have to come into each present moment as if you are seeing it for the very first time. That is being born again, moment after moment after moment. I'm removing what I think is real so that I can stand in this moment with exactly what is real. Then I run across another line in the Bible that for years Jesus says, I'm going, but I'm going to send the Holy Spirit, the paraclete, the helper. The word paraclete in the Greek literally means to come alongside and help. That's if you think about a pair of cleats in soccer, they're meant to help you dig in. So this paraclete means I'm going to come alongside you and help you. It does not remove your responsibility. It just gives you help in your responsibility. And then I started to realize the word responsibility actually means your ability to respond. I'm like, holy shit. Now we're just talking about decisions. One
Wow.
more, and then I'm gonna
Oh
stop
my
talking.
gosh, Jason. No,
So,
keep going. This is
so,
amazing. I'm like,
so
oh,
I'm sitting with a client in a Waffle House on a random Tuesday night going through step work. And for his step work, he had to figure he did not grow up Christian, no kind of faith based, nothing, didn't grow up with any framework. So he's trying to figure out who his higher power is. And he's writing, and we're talking, he's writing, he's talking. Then he takes a sip of his coffee and he goes, I've got it. I'm like, okay. He goes, I know what my higher power is. I was like, all right, tell me what it is. He goes, my higher power is my next decision because that's what's deciding what my future looks like. I said, you are exactly right. That is nothing could be closer to the absolute truth then a relationship to God means I step into each moment as if it's brand new. I access the paraclete, which is the Holy Spirit, and I make a decision that is most loving back to myself. And that creates the future that I will have. And it reminds me of Paul in Romans chapter 12, verses 1 through 3. Therefore, don't be conformed any longer to the patterns
yes.
of this world. Well, the patterns of this world are, well, Jason, you are a man, you live in Georgia, you are straight, you are, whatever label you put, those are just patterns. That doesn't mean that's what I am. It's a pattern. And Paul says we should stop conforming to patterns, which are thoughts and ideas that we've been taught. But he says this instead, be transformed, changed by doing what? Making your mind new. Same thing as Jesus talked about being born again. We're going to make our mind new. We're going to try to forget what it is that we believe to be true so that we can sit with what is truth. And then he says, then you can know what God's perfect will is. Well, Diana, I come to realize that's because God is not a thought and exercise in thinking. God is in being. God
Mm,
doesn't, it's not like God speaks English or Chinese or Mandarin. God speaks God language, and that's not speaking in tongues either. For those of you charismatics are about to go all crazy on me, that means that when I sit still, I have this thing called a vagus nerve, and that vagus nerve is something that God gave me, and it runs from my brain all the way down to my root chakra, and it is taking in information. We now know that our stomachs have as many neurons as a cat's brain does. We have more than just one brain. We think with our body, we think with our mind, we think with our prana, our energy, our soul, our God self. And when we just sit with that, when
mm,
we are just able to stop in meditation, cold water, yoga, breath work, we're able to just learn how I'm just letting go of what I think is real so that what is real, the essence of God, can give me an unction, is what we called it in the Southern Baptist Church, a feeling.
mm,
That is the helper going, hey, this is the direction you need to go.
right.
Sometimes that isn't a form of prayer, and that I may come to that space going, I really would like an answer to this question. And sometimes I just need to shut myself up and just let God say what God needs to say. Because at the end of the day, I don't even know what to ask for if I were to ask. It's like I'm going to tell God what I need. Like, okay, it's like I don't
Yeah.
even know how to begin to comprehend that. I can tell God what I want, but
Yeah.
if I have wants, that means I have attachments and it means I'm not being born again. So to be
Whoa.
born again means I can just submit to this thing that is here right now and whatever it wants for my life, I could just go in that direction
In this present moment, be
in this
still.
present moment. Yeah.
Be still. And that was hard for me too because you hit so many things just now I'm thinking
I
because
know.
I worked in alternative high schools most of my career before I started my private practice. So alternative
Mm-hmm.
high schools, what you're talking about, what you saw in the wilderness, I saw in the urban
Yeah.
wilderness.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And you're spot on because it's like and I remember these kids would come in and be like, I don't know why I do these things, but I keep doing it. And I'm just like, I do. It's survival. And what you're hitting, I want to hit all of that because my audience needs to understand that each of us have that prefrontal cortex, that vagus nerve, I talk about probiotics. I mean, I bring people from all walks of health on purpose, acupuncturists, chiropractic care, psychiatrists, just because sometimes what happens, and saw this in the churches that I attended and the people that were leadership, because I was raised Catholic, by the way, Jason. I was raised Catholic, but at home, my grandma was practicing Santeria. Okay, so I saw a whole different kind of Caribbean
Sure.
thing going on, and 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 that, I'm always asking questions. I'm always going, okay, what's this going on? But you can't talk about it because that's not American or whatever,
Hmm.
So to me, though, I know with my personal experience that I was, people will say I had no self-control. If ADHD existed back in elementary school, I would have been diagnosed with that because I was always very, very hyper, and my brain was constantly like scattered. I want to say like
Hmm.
always asking questions, and I would get kindergarten, first grade. The nuns would always with the ruler
Yep.
because they're like, you have no self control. You have no self control. But no one bothered to try to understand that someone with their brain not fully developed, it was survival. It was
Hmm.
me surviving. So what you said about alcohol, let me tell you, marijuana was my thing. The
Yeah.
second I took that first puff at 12 years old, it just made everything go away.
Hmm. Yeah.
You
Slows
know?
down the voices. Yeah.
Yeah, slows down the voices, the anxiety, the hyperness, and that's the thing. Many people that I used to work with, or even now, maybe listening, and it's like we could blame the lack of resources. We could blame the government. We could blame our parents. We could blame ourselves. That shame and guilt. I want to know though, with your experience, because cold plunge, I did my first cold plunge over a year ago, and that
Hmm.
changed my whole life too.
Yeah.
Because Jason, I'm not, I hate the cold weather. I'm in South Florida, right? I'm a Caribbean girl, right? That's one thing. Number two, I was having a lot of situations happening because of mold, and you can listen to other episodes to understand my story. But I remember sitting at that cold plunge, and my son was like, "Mom, just let's do it. Let's do it. You're here. You paid money to go in, and let's do it." And I'm just like, I don't think I can. But he really motivated me. And when I went in there, it shifted everything. I gained the fear kind of went away of things.
Hmm.
I'm able to go back in the ocean and go boogie boarding now. I was having so much fear, and that was my
Hmm.
brain that was being stuck. Right?
Yep.
Can you explain that more? I need to my audience to understand cold because I haven't been able to talk to someone about understanding the cold plunge and
Sure.
all this. This is a beautiful the discomfort. Like I literally was able to go up to 4 minutes, which is a flippin' miracle for my bony butt. But it does. I haven't done it in a while, but I know what it did for me for that year and a half. That got me better. Like the sauna helped me a lot. The cold plunging, the breath work. I did a 1 hour breath work, and I felt that shifted me too. So I need people to understand, especially the Christians that are listening, because I've had people say this is new age. You know what I mean? The judgment
Hmm.
that you get from a bunch of different denominations, or this is not godly, or these are the patterns of the world. You're supposed to renew your mind, and they're so stuck in their flavor of denomination. I don't know how else to
Well, they're
explain
stuck in
it.
their certainty. That's the sad part about where they are. There's Peter Enns wrote a book called The Sin of Certainty, and it is our certainty that makes us feel good because if we can go, well, I know this is the way it works, then we feel good. But we don't know how it works because if there's a way for me to understand God, then that makes me God because I
Ooh,
understand God, right? So there's
oof.
got to be a way for me to submit myself to. People say, "Well, you're agnostic." I'm like, maybe because I mean I can't know, but I can know just not here. I can know here. So here's the thing, and I want to start this with a caveat to your listeners because I want to get as much of this in as I can before they start checking out on us. There is no magic pill to healing yourself. There is
Amen.
none. So cold water, I got to go, oh, let me get in a cold plunge. Tomorrow I'll be better. That's horseshit. There is no magic pill.
That's
So
right.
nervous system regulation is just like if someone decided they're going to run a marathon tomorrow, they're going to get up tomorrow morning and they're going to start running whatever their limits are. They might run a mile, they might run 2 miles, they might run 3 miles. Or if someone decided tomorrow they want to become an Olympic weightlifter, they're not going to start by deadlifting 450 pounds. They're going to start wherever they are and they're going to start working toward this goal. Nervous system regulation is the exact same way. So, without going into too much science, dysregulation is an attempt to soothe a trauma.
Mm.
Paul in Romans chapter 7 said, the things that I want to do is not what I do. It's the things that I don't want to do that I keep on doing. And he said, who will save this wretched man? Thanks be to Christ. We think Christ is Jesus's last name. Paul would not have referred to Jesus as Christ. Christ was a cosmic understanding of this thread that runs through all people who are spiritual beings. And this unbelievable divine energy is a great book by Richard Rohr, a Franciscan monk called The Cosmic Christ. You should read it. It is a great read. So we have these behaviors that we don't want to have, but they are wired into us not as our enemy. They are literally trying to protect part of us. So the first thing that I try to tell people is you got to learn how to be gentle with yourself. This thing that you've been calling your sin or your burden or whatever you've been calling it is actually you trying to love yourself. This doctrine of original sin is such horseshit for somebody to teach you that you were born a sinner and you are just the best you can do. Your righteousness is filthy rags. All it gives is you an excuse to stay the way you are because you can always go, well, I'm just a sinner. First, you got to erase that. That's got to go. Okay. And start asking yourself the question, what makes me imperfect in this moment? Well, somebody might say, well, you don't know the things I've done. Yeah, but that's the things you've done. And they might say, well, you don't know the things I'm capable of. Well, that's the things you might do. But as you sit in this moment, right here, right now, there's nothing stopping you from being absolutely sinless and perfect. And if you say, but I believe in the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, yay for you. So the death and burial and resurrection of Jesus Christ says that you have been made perfect. So freaking live that way. It means that you have been empowered by the Holy Spirit to live this life. So if someone still says, but Jason, I just can't, that's called nervous system dysregulation. Here's what happens. If you imagine my arm is our spine, kind of a big spine, but this arm, spine, and this is our brain sitting on top of the spine. And inside here, my thumb, this is the amygdala. I think it's the hippocampus as well. It is what makes up our limbic system. It is the very tip top of the spinal column. It is the first thing that forms in your brain in utero. It's the reason why babies in utero can respond. This part has developed. This here part on the front is called the prefrontal cortex. Down here, we stay alive, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. This is what tells our eyes to blink, our heart to beat, our lungs to breathe. This is where logic lives. This is where 1 + 1 = 2. This is where if I touch the hot stove, it'll burn me. This is all about logic. This is all about survival. Now, here's what begins to happen. We start forming this prefrontal cortex as a child, and it doesn't fully form until males are about 26, females are about 23 or 24. As this starts to develop, there are things that this sends down here. Think about tying your shoes. If someone said, I need to tie my shoes, you just lean over and tie your shoes. You don't go cross the laces, tuck it under, make a tree and run around. You don't do all that because you, through rote memory, your mom sit down with you and set one shoe with you and one shoe with her and showed you how over and over and over you tied your shoe until this process called myelination happened. You can Google myelination. I'm not going to go into all that, but it's a gel-like substance that goes around two synapses that creates hormone release 100 times faster than normal. Myelination happened, sent that action down into the amygdala or into the limbic system. Now you don't have to think to tie your shoe, you just tie your shoe. Anytime you have a repeated action that gives a dopaminergic response that becomes habitual, it leaves your prefrontal cortex and goes into your amygdala because your body starts to believe that you are surviving because of that thing. Okay.
Mm.
Now we get triggered. We have a trauma, we have a moment, we have stress, we have loneliness, we have anger, you name it, whatever that may be, that triggers this amygdala. This guy right here goes offline. It's called flipping your lid. It's a clinical term. We no longer have access. Our prefrontal cortex is gone. So think about You're walking down an alley in the middle of the night, you hear footsteps coming behind you and somebody's running towards you. You're not going, I wonder if I should run. I wonder if I should be scared. No, you're scared
Mm-hmm.
shitless and you take off running. That's because this guy has no business in that space. This guy is who you want on the scene. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if I have behaviors that I do not want, I can start to understand they've stored themselves down here. So when I feel lonely, if every time I felt lonely I masturbate, guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to masturbate.
Yeah.
If I feel anxious and every time I feel anxious I have a glass of wine, guess what? That's the tool that this guy has. This guy doesn't even have access to it anymore. He's offline. This guy's just going, I need to stay alive and this is how I do it. All right,
Mm-hmm.
that's the basics of it. When
Right.
I get into cold water, I set this guy off immediately. I drop down into that ice water, bam, prefrontal cortex gone. Amygdala goes, get out. What are you doing? You're going to
Yeah.
die. You
Yeah.
can't live in here. You've lost your mind. But what you do is you start to breathe. When breath connects our entire system,
Mm-hmm.
theos pneumos, the breath of God. In the beginning, God breathed it into man according to the
Amen.
Bible, the
Mm-hmm.
prana, the energy according to yogic
The,
tradition. We
the chi.
all the chi, all religious traditions, spiritual traditions believe
Yeah.
that the breath is the energy. We start to breathe, and guess what starts to happen? We take that prefrontal cortex under our own fruition and we go, no, no, I'm okay. And 20 seconds is the magic number. You get rational thought. When rational thought comes online, you get this massive dopamine release, and
Mm-hmm.
you go, I am amazing. I can sit with this discomfort. And 2 minutes is the magic number. Some people say 3 or 4. 2 minutes is
Mm-hmm.
plenty. All the studies I've read, you get out and you're like, I am a spiritual badass because
Yes.
I just stayed with dysregulation and I used my breath, my theos pneumos, and I thought I am just fine. You take the same thought process to the breath work, to the yoga. I'm sitting with tension. I'm holding it till it feels comfortable. I'm releasing the tension. Then we go to meditation. In meditation, we sit and thoughts come and we let them go. Thoughts come and we let them go. Guess what? We take every thought captive and make it obedient, right? It's what the Bible
Yes.
says. Meditation teaches us how to feel and have a thought and go, that's not me, and let that go. Cold water breath work yoga helps us sit with those triggers long enough. So what we're doing is we're creating space between feeling and action. And that space is thought. I'm going, I feel it and I go, wait a minute. I don't have to act on that. And I can stop the action before it controls me. But Diana, if people don't have an everyday practice, once
Yeah.
again, just like if
Yeah.
they were training for a marathon, I have a lot of guys get in and the first time they get in, they feel amazing. Like, oh my God, this is the most amazing thing I've ever experienced. I have found all the answers in the cold
Yeah.
water,
Exactly.
but you have
Hmm.
to continue to do it.
Right.
Because it does feel good the first time you ever do it, but you're literally training
Right.
your nervous system how to communicate with your brain. And I believe that when you train that nervous system how to communicate with the brain, you also access God.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, listen, the renewing of the mind and also neuroplasticity, it all comes together now. Like people, like the science people and some of the faith people, because some people that are believers are so stuck in. You're right. What you said earlier about like if I think I know it all and I'm 100% sure, then I have become God. It's true. I
Yep.
always said that. I'm like, you're just putting God in a little beautiful box with a pretty little bow. And
Yep.
now, and the reason why you're doing that is for certainty because of fear, false evidence appearing real. And that does stroke your own ego because I work with both secular and Christians.
Sure.
And and that's the thing. I'm like, okay, so with the secular, it's your ego and humility, right?
Yep.
And then with the Christians, it's your flesh and your spirit battling.
Yep.
Like, and
Yep.
these are the things to learn. So with cold water, cold plunging, and being taught to be comfortable in the discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
That's such a powerful moment. And understanding the world is so much bigger than our westernized, conventional insurance model ways of thinking. This is where we have to understand, like, why do we believe the things we believe?
Mm-hmm.
Because sometimes
Yeah.
what with some of my clients, emptying the mind, because I think what I've seen also in the new age yoga, because I was part of that until I was 29. That's 29 is when I decided to be like, okay, what you talked about at 8 years old, that's what happened to me at 29 was that, oh my God, like it was just, it's hard to explain it, but it happened. And that's when I'm like, I'm going to follow Jesus Christ for the rest of my life. Right. But then I realized, like, wait, everyone has an opinion on who he is and they all think they're right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, did I
Yeah,
interrupt
no,
you?
no, no, no,
Yeah,
Jason. We're having
I'm
a conversation.
I'm working on a book that's going to
Mhm.
come out hopefully in the next 3 years called Neurotheology. The idea being that we can take everything we know about the nervous system, the brain, the prana, the energy, the vagus nerve, and we could take all that and we can start to take every single religious tradition. We act like we have some sort of new information. I hear people say neural pathways, it's neural pathways. I'm like, yeah, that's samskaras in yoga, 3,000 years old. They were talking about samskaras, these grooves in your brain that may help you duplicate predictable patterns. We're not coming up with anything new. All this
No.
stuff is old as humanity is, but we have to shift our perspective. So neurotheology to me means that I am figuring out how God has wired me to interact with the world, not how I can wire God to interact with me. It's
Oh,
like I have to be able to go, this is the way that I was created through a process of creation, and I have evolved to be this, but this does not mean that this is how I was meant to be. I mean, in our culture, if you get cold, you turn the thermostat up. If you get hot, you turn the thermostat down. If you have to poop, you go to your bathroom and get on a toilet. If you wash your hands, you turn on the sink. If you want something to eat, you go in the kitchen and cook it. That is a very, very new development in the history of humanity.
yep,
So, to all of these conveniences have created a brain that goes, well, I should just get what I want right now. And so,
exactly.
if I want pornography, I can pull out my phone. If I want marijuana, now I can just go down to the corner store. If I want kratom, I can go get kratom. If I want heroin, I can order it on the dark web. I can get
Wait,
anything I want.
right, and let's just go for the women a little because a lot of women listen. It's like if I want, and I'm guilty, and I have to deal with that too, because sometimes when you're sitting still, you realize, oh, this is the next thing to work on, right?
Mhm.
Amazon. I
Oh,
swear.
one click, 100%, man. Listen, I told my partner, we got at the end of last year, and I said, you
Whew.
know what? For 2026, I'm doing nothing new 2026. I'm not buying a new pair of shoes, a new pair of pants, a new
Oh
shirt,
my
a new
gosh.
nothing. I'm not buying anything new if it does not work related. So stuff
Right.
that I have to have, or just stuff that, contact solution and stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it has been unbelievable how hard that was. But I made up my mind. Like, I'm just not going to do it. But that
Mhm.
is it. Amazon has given us a complete marketing framework on how to get people to just buy more shit simply through their dopaminergic release.
Yeah,
Oh,
well,
look at
social
that.
media
Click.
too. Like
Yeah,
this is the
all of it.
thing. This is the first year that I'm taking Lent seriously, like
Mm-hmm.
real seriously. And I know they're like, Lent, that's a Catholic thing. And I'm like, people are like, are you going back to being Catholic? I'm like, no, what I'm doing is learning. And I am right now in the rabbit hole of the Desert Fathers and Mothers,
Oh, yeah.
the Encletica. I'm like, I never even heard of her. Wait. And now I am in
Yeah.
that rabbit hole. And I'm like, you know how what you're talking about thousands of years, well, this was, yeah, thousands of years ago, where they were in Egypt, Palestine, and everything, writing about the Bible and monks. And I'm like, wait a minute, like we can still learn from
Yeah.
each other, from those that came before us. And like we're in history right now. The world, okay, because I could sit here, Jason, and probably talk to you for 2 more hours,
We can do
honestly.
this again.
Yeah.
We can
When
do
your
it
book
again. We
comes
should do
out,
it again. Yeah.
when your the Sacred Grit or your book comes out, we should.
Yeah.
Or no, the other one, the Neo Theology. I love that stuff. But I want to leave our listeners with some really great encouragement, tools, understand anything that is coming up for you to share with them. Plus, how do they work with you if they want to work with you? Just something empowering. I don't care if it's practical tips and tools, books, whatever it is, because I really want them to feel like there's hope in this world. Because right now, if they stop listening to us and turn on any news channel, the
They can get it. Yeah.
fear, the World
Yeah.
War III coming on, the
Yeah.
politics, Epstein files, all the things that are out there. You
Yeah.
know, I want us to be agents of peace and love and what Jesus Christ told us to do.
All right, so check this out. They
Mm.
came to Jesus one day. This is what I'm going to leave your listeners with. And two things. They came to Jesus one day and they said, "Hey, Jesus." And these were not morons, these were the educated elites of the day. They said, "So tell us, what is the greatest commandment?" He goes, "That's easy. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Second's just like it. Love your neighbor as you love who? Yourself." So, what Jesus was saying is he was saying the way that you love yourself determines the way that you love your neighbor, and that determines the way that you love your God.
Mm.
So if we do not, Diana, start with ourselves, if we do not start by loving ourselves, and a lot of people will say that's narcissism. No, it's not. It's actually quite the opposite. I had a seminary professor that said humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. Well, you don't have
Mm.
to think of yourself as much if you love yourself, radically love yourself. So here's the perfect place to start. This is where I start every person I work with. And most people think I'm going to tell them to get in a cold shower. That's not where I'm going to tell you to start. Here's what I'm going to tell you to start. When your feet touch the floor in the morning, take 5 minutes and do one thing that makes you feel radically loved by yourself. That when you walk away from whatever that is that you did for those 5 minutes, you go, I feel like a better human because I did that. It could be walking your dog, it could be praying, it could be reading your Bible, it could be making your bed, it could be a cold plunge, it could be 5 minutes of sun salutations, it could be meditation, it could be a cup of coffee on the back porch, anything that when you walk away from it, you're going, I am a better version of myself. Because if you start with self love and move out from there, you will love your neighbor and you will love your God as a byproduct. It's like when you get off the airplane, or get on an airplane and that video comes on. It says, in the event the cabin loses pressure, the oxygen mask is going to drop down from the bottom. Put your mask on first before assisting others. If you are dying from oxygen deprivation, you cannot help anyone. So if you are dying from love deprivation, guess what? The only person that can love you completely like you are is you, because you
Mm.
are the only person that knows you. You are the only person that fully understands you, and you're the only person that can fulfill you. You are you, fearfully and wonderfully made, and God, the God of the universe, lives inside of you. So when you decide to do something that is loving to yourself, you're deciding to let God love you. And if you'll start that one simple practice, you will see your life begin to change. And that 5 minutes will turn into 10, and that 10 will turn to 15. And then maybe you go on the website, thesacredgrit.com, and you book a consultation call, and we get on the phone for free, and I will help you design a practice for free. I'm not going to charge you a dime to do that. I'm going to teach you how in one session to start a practice that will help you regulate your nervous system. Beyond that, if you want me to keep coaching you, which you will need it, all spiritual leadership. I tell people all the time, I'm not a spiritual leader, I'm a spiritual pointer. I'm just pointing to something that is already inside of you. I'm not telling you anything new. I'm asking you questions so that you can find what's already in you and bring it out of you. And you will start to see your life change
Mm.
100%. I have guys on methamphetamine. I have guys on heroin. I have guys on pornography. I have guys on alcohol. And I have not
Wow.
had a single person relapse while they were doing the practices every single day. And the ones that do relapse, when they call me, the first question I say is, how long have you not been practicing? The average time is 2 weeks. They stop 2 weeks later, they relapse because they're still young in the practice. It doesn't mean that they won't ever get away from being able to do
Yeah.
the practice or having to do the
Yeah.
practice, but it means in the early stages, we're very, very vulnerable to relapse. So I teach grace, forgiveness, self love, radical sitting with yourself, loving yourself, and nervous system regulation. And through that, people like you, the therapists, the 12-step programs, the folks that are much more qualified than I am, can step in and help people really wire those neural pathways in a way that'll bring about change.
Yeah, we all need a team. We
We
do.
all
I
need a
have I
team.
have a team. I have my therapist, my acupuncture, my chiropractor, my masseuse, and I know it all costs money. Like this is the thing people don't understand. Well, I don't have money for this. I don't have, well, hence our free podcast, right? But
Yep.
also it's having yourself become your advocate and accountability. accountability is so important because God did
Yeah,
not create us to be alone. We've been tribal since the beginning of time.
that's right.
And we have to find healthy because some of us come from toxic
Yeah.
backgrounds or and just the boundaries. And this is the thing, like you work with Jason, and then I mean I only can do therapy in the state of Florida, but I you know what I mean, but there's people out there, and it's just having the understanding of that first step. Like you said, I love that first 5 minutes. I do. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I give a list to my clients, and I'm like, okay, out of this list of 100, I need you to pick two things that you're willing to do this week. And then we'll talk about it next week without guilt or shame. I'm also loving the internal family systems. I don't know if you know
Yep.
Dr. Richard Schwartz's work.
Richard Schwartz. Yep.
Yeah, I love
Yep.
that too, because this is the thing.
That's how
As
you put it
we
back together.
yeah, and how
Yeah.
we move forward. Like Jason, you have a gifting. Like to me, I'm like, dude, you should still have a church. I would go. I would love to go because honestly, it's hard sometimes when I'm at a church and I'm like another concert, and it's just so like it's like where is the Acts, the book of Acts, like the real stuff where we're real with the grit, like,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I don't want, but then I'm like, oh, now you're judging. And I'm like, oh gosh, all right.
Well, I mean, I don't think it's not I mean, it's fine to judge. Who cares? It's like, I mean, I just don't, I think sometimes I look at a lot of churches and I'm like, if you guys would just be honest about what you're doing, you're putting on a big show and a big production to tell people your theology and your pastor's a good performer, rock on. Charge
Yeah.
a $50 door fee and
Mhm.
be honest and say, hey, we don't have all the answers. We have our answer and this is what we're
Yeah.
doing. Pay $50 at the door, but stop taking advantage of people.
Yes.
Stop being some kind of a magical guru that's going to help everybody fix it if they become
Right.
Republican and vote for the right person. Just be honest. Jason, that's the reason why I'm a coach, the reason why I'm not a pastor anymore. I am a spiritual coach. I am a nervous system regulation coach. I am more than happy to help you. I have an organization called Adventures in Recovery where we call it Man Church. We gather once a month. We do practices together. We rock climb together, mountain bike together, hike
Oh my
together. We have
gosh.
2 Zoom meetings every month, one on the second Wednesday and one on the third Thursday. Anybody can join. Any man can join. Sorry. It
No,
is a
no
man's
worries.
organization, but it
Yes.
is the church to me,
Yeah.
and I pastor those men, and it's free. That organization doesn't cost anybody anything to come and be a part of,
Mhm.
but there is no reason that we can't heal in the world that we live in nowadays.
Right.
And if people say I can't afford it, guess what? There are so many free resources. You just have to put your mind to it and get after it.
And this
And
too
I
for
have never let money stop me from helping somebody ever. There has never been a time. I'll tell you what will stop me from helping somebody. Don't
mhm.
show up for an appointment that I did for free and don't put the work in. Those two things stop me. Other than that, if you're willing to put the work in and be a part, I am willing to work with you every single time.
Wow. Now, is your adventure, what was it again? Adventures in
Adventures in Recovery. We call
A-
it Air Georgia.
Air. Okay. So there is no Air Florida or Air
No,
Colorado or Air
there's
any.
Air Tennessee and Chattanooga, and then
I,
there's one in Georgia, and we're working on one for North Carolina.
where in North Carolina?
Probably out of Asheville's way it's looking right now.
I will be up. Well, I'll talk after. Oh, I would love to you and my husband and me and okay, but that's something for
Yeah.
not the listeners to listen to. All right. Anyway, thank you so much. Everything will be in the show notes if you want to work with Jason. I appreciate your time, and listener, please, if you made it this far, do not forget to trust in the Lord, guard your heart, and renew your mind. Bye. And now for the disclaimer to make sure you understand that you are responsible for you. The content provided on the Holistic Counselor podcast is for entertainment and informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified mental health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical or mental condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay seeking it because of something you have heard on this podcast. The views expressed on this podcast are my personal opinions and do not represent the views of any professional organizations with which I am affiliated. Call your doctor, 911, or 988 immediately if you have a medical emergency. The Holistic Counselor podcast does not recommend or endorse any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned on the podcast. Reliance on any information provided by the Holistic Counselor podcast, guests appearing on the podcast at the invitation of the Holistic Counselor podcast, or other listeners to the podcast is solely at your own risk. Confidentiality notice. If you engage with the Holistic Counselor podcast by commenting or posting and are a client, please be aware that you may be revealing information that could compromise your confidentiality. Please remember that disclosing your identity or personal details can be linked to your clinical material. As a therapist, I am bound by confidentiality and will not respond to any disclosures of this type on this podcast. I am committed to upholding the ethics and confidentiality of the therapeutic relationship, which extends to all forms of communication in accordance with the laws and professional guidelines that govern mental health professionals. I want you to know that your privacy is of utmost importance, and you are responsible for protecting it when interacting on this platform or any other public forum. Thank you.